It's time for On the Farm in Alabama, bringing farmers and agribusiness the latest news from Alabama Extension and the Auburn University College of Agriculture. Now here's your host, Alabama Extension Regional Agent, Eddie McGriff.
I'd like to welcome everybody to On the Farm in Alabama, and we've been talking with Dr. Ron Smith, whose career at Auburn University with Alabama Extension as their cotton entomologist spanned almost 50 years, 48 years. Ron retired for good this past January 31st, but we're going to be talking about his career when he started in 1972 as the Alabama Extension cotton entomologist. And Ron, it's unique that we've had so few extension cotton entomologists.
Well, hey, that's a real interesting point too. I looked back and started investigating one day, and I found that Jerry Ruffin, who I knew personally, he had already retired and moved over to the Department of Agriculture at that time, but he was hired in 1924, and he worked till 1961, and I knew him in the era then after he got over to the Department of Agriculture. But he was followed then after all those 30-something plus years. Walter Grimes, Dr. Walter Grimes, who later went on to a distinguished career with the Bayer Corporation, he came in for about 1 year before he went on to higher things. And then Dr. Roy Ledbetter was in charge of the program then for a few years in there, and that's when I was brought in. There was special funding provided to the Extension Service in 1972 for every state to hire one additional cotton entomologist to make a better emphasis in promoting integrated pest management, or IPM, and scouting and all those things that go along with it, use of thresholds. And so that's when I got the position. And so I came in the spring of '72 and stayed through all the changes that have gone on since that time, and it's been quite a humongous change, both in the pest and the technology that we have to combat the pest.
When you started in 1972, we had some DDT and toxaphene were still being used, and it's your involvement and other entomologists' involvement in integrated pest management that's really made cotton so much more environmentally friendly, plus the development of the boll weevil eradication program. Exactly. and softer chemistries. But tell us when you first started and how you transitioned from, or how the cotton industry transitioned from DDT to much safer pesticides.
Yeah, that's a real interesting story, and that's what's kept me interested in my career all these almost 50 years. And I like to claim, my claim to fame is that I'm the last living entomologist or working entomologist that actually recommended DDT to farmers, but that only lasted 1 year in 1972. But basically what we had was the chlorinated hydrocarbons during that period, and they were running out of steam as far as being effective in killing some of the pests, particularly bollworms at that time, or tobacco budworms. But we struggled there for a few years, and then DDT was removed from the market in December 31st of 1972. So I was only involved with it 1 year. And then we had toxaphene, BHC, but we were beginning to use the phosphates then, which were really effective, but they were pretty highly toxic to all warm-blooded animals, and the things like methylparathion and guthion. And we went into the late 70s with just that, because the chlorinated hydrocarbons were really almost totally non-effective at that time. But we were really struggling controlling insects. We were really making a mess out of things, and really that's one reason the government put some additional funds in there to go to more of a management concept rather than spraying every 5 days. But in the late 70s, we got into the class of chemistry called the synthetic pyrethroids. And they were just wonderful compared to what we had. A little more pricey, a little bit longer residual, not really hot on the boll weevil, but that they would keep the weevil under control. And that way, with the weevil, we had to spray every 5 days, all summer long, because the phosphates were short residual in the field. the pyrethroids were much more residual on the plant, so we could spread our interval out to 7 days then. Plus, for a few years, they just gave perfect control, and then after about a decade, they began to slip, and we needed new technology, and we'll get into some of those things in a few minutes if you'd like.
I would. One thing is the people don't realize, since we eliminated the boll weevil, how much damage they did and how much it really limited our yields. I can always remember when we had the boll weevil, we'd go out there and you would see the white blooms, and you could see when the sun was behind them, you could see the boll weevils in the blooms. It really didn't matter. The joke is there would be always 3 boll weevils in a bloom. 2 would be mating, and 1 would be watching for the plane.
Yeah, I've heard that story, and that's real funny, but you could have 6 or 8 or 10 weevils in a bloom sometime if the farmer hadn't done a very good job. But the boll weevil did dominate that period of time with cotton production. It was what we called the key pest. It was the pest you had to start spraying for early every year and get on a treadmill with insecticides. And so they dominated, and I don't think we could have stayed in the cotton production business had we not had the boll weevil eradication program. That was a lifesaver. Now, it was a struggle getting through it because we had to really go hard after the weevil to get the last one. We had pheromone traps which would tell us where they're at, but still we had to kill them with a pesticide. Malathion was a safe one to humans, and that was the one that was utilized to do that. But anyway, it just took a while, and then you had to have the program voted in in the next increment. The program started in the fall of 86 or 87 in Alabama, and then it was 95 before we finished in the rest of the state and had the weevil pretty much out of the picture. So that was almost 10 years of having to deal with some excessive sprays just to eliminate the weevil. So that brought some problems, but boy, was it good going down the mountain on the other side, because it has kept us in the cotton business, and when we took out the weevil. And then about the time we got the weevil out, another real significant event happened. The genetically altered cotton plants, we called them Beauregard cotton at that time, they came on the market in 96. So we had had a major worm problems in 94, 95. So, but that genetic technology was a lifesaver again for the farmers. So we took another big step up in 96 to a step up in the way of reducing the need for pesticides on cotton.
Well, I can remember when we were getting the farmers to vote and trying to educate them on the benefits of the boll weevil eradication program. Of course, I was a county agent in Georgia at the time in southwest Georgia, and we were spraying for boll weevil and bollworms 18 to 21 times a year.
Yeah.
Like you said, we got on about a 5-day schedule, and that was the only way you could control them.
Yeah. Well, we didn't talk about some of the fun, not fun things, but incidents that happened during this boll weevil eradication era, and I'll just mention a couple of them. The program got as far as about a Montgomery, Auburn area in central Alabama, and they sprayed too close to a retired professor's house. And he said, if you do that again by plane, and they were doing it by plane, small field, but he lived way out in the woods, off campus. He was kind of a naturalist. And he said, I'm going to take you to court. Well, they sprayed it again, and he took them to court. And the federal judge says, you either stop the program or you stop it right here and do an environmental impact statement. And really that should have been done in the Carolinas before the program started, but it was not. So it took about a year and a half to get that, maybe 2 years to get the environmental impact statement done. And so the program couldn't expand. So that means the same farmers were on the border every year getting sprayed multiple times. So that was kind of a bad scene. I remember one time we had, we always had meetings there in Lee County. There was a real vocal group of growers in the south end of the county, and we had to meet with the eradication people. And one time we met in a church just to minimize the chance of a fight breaking out. Yeah. So I always thought that was kind of funny. And then as we would go to these other areas of the state and try to promote the program to get the vote to make it advance. We were in a county over in western Alabama one time, and the farmer, I guess, thought, or the farmer's son thought that I was over promoting the program, and he just threatened to take me outside and do physical harm.
Well, it was pretty rough. A lot of people don't remember, but it cost the farmers $35 an acre to be in the boll weevil eradication program, and they still had to do all their spraying for other pests on top of that. So it was a huge financial burden. But the other thing that I remember so well is that when we started doing the spraying for the boll weevils, we didn't realize that we still had one beneficial insect that kept the beet armyworms in check. And I know you and I have talked about this. My favorite beneficial insect is a Cotesian wasp, because that was the main beneficial that kept the beet armyworms. But beet armyworms, when we took out that beneficial insect, they liked to eat us up.
They really did, and that lasted as long as we were putting on the heavy applications to eradicate the boll weevil with a malathion. And that had happened the first summer. The beet armyworm was in our books as a cotton pest, but we'd never had to deal with it. All of a sudden, the first summer, they were a problem. That was back in the 80s. They were still a problem in 95, the last year that we did the area-wide spraying. So, dominating pest, and there was research out of California that showed that you could actually incite this pest or trigger it to be released by area-wide spraying on large blocks. And they had taken fields out there, the researchers, and had put off multiple acre blocks and sprayed them heavily and created beet armyworms just in those particular blocks where they were spraying. So we knew that there was a cause and effect there, but there wasn't anything we could do about it. But there was really no answer to the beet armyworm. There was no effective chemical. There was one being developed by the American Cyanamid Company by the name of Pirate. You might remember that.
I do.
And we applied for an emergency use every year for about 5 or 6 years. Eventually, we got it in August of 1995, and the problem was over about 3 weeks later. So we really never got much use out of it. So that one pest just ate us up, and it was we knew that it was this Cotesian wasp that you mentioned that was keeping them under control. And during that time, there was no question that was the most valuable beneficial insect in the system. Now, they're still out there, but they're a little small wasp, so the average person don't see them.
Well, I think I see them, or you can recognize them, because there's a little rice-shaped fuzzy cocoon. When they parasitize a worm, they'll spin out of it and spin into this cocoon. So you'll see them. I see them mostly in peanut fields.
Yeah. Okay. But a dominant pest, and I'm sure they're out there in the system now. They're real quiet. You don't notice them, but they were highly effective against that one target pest, the beet armyworm.
Well, that gets into when we eliminated the boll weevil, and then we had the genetically altered cotton, what we call Bogart or BT cotton. Yeah. Then we went into a phase where we went down from maybe 15 to 18, and southwest Georgia it was 18 to 21, yeah. Insecticide sprays to 2 or 3. But when we got the Bogart cotton, we ran into another pest that we didn't even recognize, and that's the stink bug, and that is one of the predominant pests in cotton right now.
Well, we're into a low spray environment. You've talked about all those sprays in South Georgia. That was kind of a worst case situation with the boll weevil. We were 12 to 15 probably over most of the state, but it was so bad that the cotton had actually left the southern part of our state, and cotton was under allotments during some of those years, and the people in North Alabama had actually bought the allotments because they didn't have as much weevil pressure. We were probably spraying 4 or 5 times in the Tennessee Valley because colder winters kept the weevil suppressed. But anyway, we we would just spray and spray and spray, and all those years we had the boll weevil. And when we got into the BT cotton and the Bogart cottons, we not only eliminated the weevil, but we eliminated the worm as a pest too, pretty much. So we went down to there was a few years there where we didn't spray some fields at all summer long, and eventually we found out there was something happening out there. The stink bugs were reading these press clippings about the advantages of the boll weevil, and they figured out, hey, they're not spraying this cotton, that's a good food source. And let me just tell you, I went back and found a 1903 entomology book one time, and they listed the stink bug as a significant pest of cotton. So it wasn't that they just found a new thing. We were killing stink bugs for about 80 years while we were spraying for boll weevils. But boy, when they came back, we really had to get on and learn how to manage the stink bug. But we've done that quite well. It took a little while to learn how some of their habits, but they don't reproduce as fast, so a spray will last 2 weeks lots of times, even in peak season for stink bugs. So we're spraying cotton now anywhere from 2 to 4 times basically in the state. So this has allowed us to grow cotton right up in the backyards of housing developments and neighborhoods.
I want to talk a little bit about integrated pest management program, which we call IPM, and how valuable that's been and how environmentally friendly it's been.
Well, it's IPM is just a term saying that we're going to do all the management tools we can other than just use pesticides to keep the insects suppressed below damaging levels. And some of the things we would do on that, of course, we got to monitor it, and that would be what we call scouting. And we had cotton scouts, basically college students or private consultants now that go into all these fields once a week and measure the level of the different pests. But and then we have thresholds. We realize there's a level of these pests where it's not going to pay you to spray for them. So we don't trigger a spray until they exceed that threshold, and then we try to spray, and then we monitor to see how long they're going to stay below the threshold and other things. Those are the two main things, but planning on time and a few other things that would be real important. Stalk destruction in the fall, for example, against the boll weevil when they were still in the system was a real good management tool.
Well, the boll weevil eradication program, integrated pest management, I mean, cotton acres really took off. I know in the early 80s in Georgia, we were down to 130. And after the boll weevil eradication program, there was 1.5 million acres of cotton in Georgia, which it overtook Mississippi as the #2 cotton state in the U.S. And Alabama was similar, although there's not as much area to grow cotton in Alabama as there was in Georgia.
Yeah, I very well remember that period of time in Georgia. Actually, 129,000 something acres was the official count that bottom year, and now it has grown back to 1.6 million, I believe, on one of the years. So it's amazing what it's done. But what it did in Alabama, it allowed cotton to move back to the wiregrass area and be a great rotational crop for their peanut industry down there. Also, it moved into the Gulf Coast area, and they basically couldn't grow cotton at all. Two things there: the boll weevil, and the plants would get too big because they got most of the time too much rainfall. But we got the tool, the plant growth regulator, we can use now. So that and elimination of weevil has allowed that industry to come back in that area. But you're right, Georgia was next to Texas in cotton production in the U.S. and basically I think still is every year.
And it's really took off in Alabama relatively comparatively because our goal was to produce 1 million bales of cotton.
Yeah, we actually got real close to that last year, close enough that we actually officially declared that we were there, and we ate ice cream on that. So it was a good time, and I think this year, though, with the price of things and so forth, we may not have our 500,000 acres because actually things are looking a little bit better for all commodities this year. So we may not can get our 1 million bales again, but what we could do, I want to have another goal. Let's make 2 bales to the acre, 1,000 pounds to the acre on every acre we have in cotton this year, if the rainfall helps and the hurricanes don't stop us, we might can achieve that goal.
Well, we achieved that goal up until the last couple of years in the Tennessee Valley and in the Cherokee County region in North Alabama. What's really hurt us is the harvest weather the last couple of years.
Yeah, it was terrible, and a little bit different times in different parts of the state. I know in the southern part of the state, in the Gulf Coast area, they had about a week's rainy weather in late August and had a tremendous amount of bowl rot at that time. So then we had the wind damage to some localized areas from a tropical storm and a couple of hurricanes. So terrible year last year, but hopefully things will be better in 2021.
Well, as we end up this segment, I'd want to thank you for all you've done for the cotton farmers in Alabama and your career with Auburn University and Alabama Extension. Any final thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. Somebody asked me what my best memories or what's my favorite thing. What did I gain? And the friendships that you have and develop in agriculture is what sustained me, and that's what I'll carry with me as I leave. And I'm not going very far yet, so I may be around in fields again this year.
Well, I know you're going to help me on one of the projects that I have, and that is using the thrips infestation model to make thrip sprays at one leaf. So Ron, even though he's officially retired, he's still going to be working for the cotton growers of Alabama, and we thank you for that.